Chapter 821 Escape. Even though Byron had only experienced the aftershocks, he was now shaken to the core. The once luxurious king of Filren's residence had turned into a mess amidst the explosion. Byron was so furious that he trembled all over and pulled out his gun before firing it into the air. "Caspian, I'll definitely torture you horribly." At this moment, on a hillside, Caspian was watching everything happening in Byron's residence from afar. He had already left the residence quietly with tens of thousands of his subordinates. "Lord Caspian, those fools from Filren were completely fooled by you," Laina exclaimed admiringly. This was the first time she had fought side by side with Caspian. She hadn't expected his tactics in leading troops to be so sharp. Such a way of warfare couldn't be achieved by an ordinary commander. Laina had long heard of Caspian's title as the Diatoranian god of war. In her opinion, he should command the overall situation in the main base, rather than lead troops into battle. But now it seemed that Caspian's intelligence and decision-making were both exceptional. He had completely outplayed the enemy. "They're just too stupid. I only used a few tricks and they fell for them," Caspian said calmly. "Lord Caspian, why do you understand the king of Filren so well? Are you familiar with him?" Laina asked, puzzled. "A fool like him is not worthy of my attention. I can see his flaws just from his decisions and actions. Hence, dealing with him is a piece of cake," Caspian explained. Hearing this, Laina nodded in agreement as she found his words logical. These insights could only be grasped by someone with extensive experience in 44 battles. Obviously, Caspian had achieved this. Laina looked at Caspian with admiration. Although she was a few years younger than him, she was already an adult, and her heart had long been restless. Caspian also noticed her passionate gaze, but he had long been used to it. After all, he had so many women around him. Previously, Caspian had felt something amiss with Macy when she hinted at her feelings. Though he knew her intentions, he could only pretend not to notice. After all, he was a married man. Now, he didn't know how to handle Laina's affectionate glances at him. He wasn't the kind of man who would cheat. Since he had chosen Willow, he would continue to treat her well. Caspian could control his emotions, but he couldn't resist the infatuation of these young women around him. "We can't contact Diatoran now. Someone must deliver the message." He quickly changed the subject. "Okay, I'll immediately rush to send the news out," Laina answered immediately. "Sylvia and the others hesitate to launch a full-scale attack because they think I'm still there. As long as she knows I'm safe, I believe Sylvia will make the right choice," Caspian said. The secret passage would be discovered sooner or later, so they weren't completely safe now. But as long as Sylvia captured the capital of Filren within a short period, all their problems would be solved. Laina quickly spread the news. Upon learning that Caspian was safe, Sylvia had no more reservations and prepared to take down the capital in one fell swoop. On the other hand, Macy was still lurking in the capital of Filren. Her mission was to catch Byron. She simply disguised herself and infiltrated Filren's guards. They were already short of manpower, so no one suspected Macy. "King Byron, we can't hold on much longer. There are too many enemies. I'll lead them away while you guys hurry and leave with His Majesty," Canom said urgently. Afterward, he rushed out with some guards, deliberately firing randomly to attract Sylvia's attention. Macy and a few other guards protected Byron closely as they slowly retreated. She walked to the back. When nobody was paying attention, she shot the other guards. Gunshots were echoing everywhere, so nobody knew it was Macy's doing. Byron was at a loss and could only follow Macy as she was the one left by his side. "Your Majesty, I think it's too dangerous to rush out like this. It's better for us to hide in the residence. That way, we'll still have a chance to live," Macy advised. Byron had been scared out of his wits long ago and completely followed her advice. "Okay, lead me out of here. Let's hide in the residence," Byron said anxiously. With gunfire everywhere, he felt extremely insecure. "You guys, find a way to distract the enemy." "I'll protect His Majesty," Macy shouted to the other guards. She needed to disperse everyone before dealing with Byron. Macy did this for a reason. She had learned that Caspian had left the king's residence through a secret passage. However, she hadn't figured out the location of the passage yet. Originally, she wanted to kill Byron directly, but after some thought, she decided she could capture him alive. As long as she entered the residence, she would have a chance to leave Filren. By then, she would have made a great achievement in handing Byron over to Caspian. As Macy fled with Byron, there were several times she was ready to capture him. However, she found that he had some skills. It wasn't easy to capture him. Without a guaranteed victory, she didn't dare to act rashly, otherwise she would ruin her plan. Macy led Byron into the residence and into the basement amidst the ruins, where there was actually a secret passage. Even he was stunned to see this. He had no idea at all when this secret passage was added. Without any hesitation, Byron entered the secret passage, thinking it was left by Camden. "A bunch of idiots! There's a secret passage, but nobody told me about it." Byron scolded angrily when he saw the footprints on the ground. He thought his subordinates had quietly left through here. Since there was a secret passage, his hope of survival increased a bit. This made Byron excited. Yet, the moment he stepped out of the passage, he froze in place. There were so many people outside pointing their guns at him. "You fools! Do you know who I am? How dare you point guns at me?" Byron immediately shouted in anger. Chapter 822 Alliance. Caspian subordinates were all waiting outside. They didn't expect anyone to come out of the secret passage. Moreover, Byron was dressed in ordinary clothes, so they didn't recognize him. "Can't you see that this is the king of Filren?" Macy shouted immediately. Upon hearing this, the people outside were momentarily stunned. Then, they immediately pulled the trigger. At this moment, Byron realized something was wrong. These people didn't seem to be his subordinates. It wasn't until now that he understood why so many of Caspian's subordinates could vanish without a trace. It turned out that Caspian and his soldiers had escaped through this secret passage. Byron was furious when he realized this. If he had known earlier, he would have let Jason search the mansion thoroughly. Perhaps he could have found some clues. But now it was too late. He no longer had a chance. Byron glanced at Macy, and they both raised their hands. At this moment, he still had some hope in his heart as he thought that Macy would protect him. However, he suddenly felt a sharp pain at the back of his head. He realized that Macy had hit him. The next moment, Byron's vision went black, and he fell to the ground. Byron had just seized power, and hadn't had a chance to exert it before being captured by Macy. Macy had once again achieved success. She alone had accomplished this mission. In the meeting hall of the International Alliance, various forces had gathered together. The purpose of their meeting was clear. They were here to punish Caspian because his actions had affected regional peace. Many forces felt threatened by him. Caspian is unexpectedly so aggressive. If we allow him to continue like this, he'll surely become our enemy. I think it's necessary for various forces to join hands to eliminate him. We must let the invincible Diaturanian god of war taste failure once. Otherwise, he'll think he's very powerful, an elder said angrily. Although this elder was only at the level of an innate grandmaster, he had long despised Caspian's actions. That was why he took the initiative to voice out his opinion on attacking Caspian. What's the purpose of our alliance? Isn't it to maintain peace? Now that someone has disrupted the order, are all of you going to turn a blind eye? Another elder voiced out. Their aim was to gather all forces together to deal with Caspian. Only in this way would they have a greater chance of success. As long as you're willing to help, I'll also help, another person said. If dozens of forces united to deal with Caspian, it would absolutely be easy. Caspian's existence made them feel threatened. At this time, Jason entered the meeting hall. He looked extremely disheveled, like a refugee fleeing for his life. I didn't expect Caspian to be so ruthless that he actually wants to kill us all. I hope you all can help us, Jason said pitifully. Upon hearing this, the other forces nodded in agreement. You're right. Caspian is indeed too arrogant. When Victor and the others were killed by Caspian, many were upset by this. I think it's time to take action. Alexander nodded. After several hours of discussion, the Alliance decided to send a force to deal with Caspian. At the same time, they also began negotiations with Balthazar. However, Balthazar's attitude was surprisingly firm. He didn't agree with them at all. With Caspian's reputation growing, his status in the eyes of ordinary people was also rising. Especially in South Lake City, the people's admiration for Caspian was growing stronger. In Stewart residence, Kate was preening herself in front of a mirror. A shopping mall in South Lake City was opening today, and the organizers unexpectedly invited her to attend the opening ceremony. Moreover, the organizers offered quite a lot of money, hoping that Kate could say a few words. Originally, the organizers wanted to invite Carl, but he refused. Kate was not confident either, as she had never appeared on such a public occasion. Now, with the opening ceremony, there would definitely be many people present. She wasn't sure if she was able to speak when she stood on the stage later. Moreover, many celebrities and influential people would attend the opening ceremony. It made Kate even more nervous. However, the organizers had already said that as long as she was willing to say a few words on stage, she could get a lot of money in return. For the sake of money, Kate naturally wouldn't refuse. Besides, she enjoyed the feeling of being in the spotlight. Recently, for some reason, the Stewart family had become a hot topic. Some people even invited Marilyn to participate in activities. Many people knew that the Stewart family had cut ties with Caspian, but they didn't care. They just wanted a gimmick. These businesses all wanted to rely on hype to improve their business. This era was all about riding the wave of popularity. But Carl didn't want to take part in such things. Many people had come to him, but he didn't want to make money using Caspian's popularity. Kate was unwilling at first, but after receiving benefits, she felt that Carl's attitude was unnecessary. All she cared about was making money. Everyone saw her as a charming middle-aged woman, and she almost believed it herself. Kate wasn't used to seeing so many handsome men flattering her, and people giving her applause and cheers when she appeared. However, when she returned home, the treatment she received was very different than when she was out. Whenever she saw Carl, she felt a headache. She wondered why she had to spend her life with such a man. The Stewart family members were all enjoying the benefits brought by Caspian. In contrast, Zoe felt troubled because of Caspian's identity. Someone spread the news about her being the friend of Caspian's wife. Originally, Zoe didn't have many fans, but this news doubled the number of her fans. "Zoe, are you busy now?" Willow asked. "Not really, I want to take a break for a while." "How about we go out for a stroll?" Zoe suggested. She didn't want to stay at home all the time. Since she hadn't been to the mall for a long time, she wanted to take advantage of this opportunity to go out. "Why are you in the mood to have fun today?" Willow asked. "Humans need to relax. They can't just stay at home all the time, right?" Zoe said. "But we're quite tight on money right now, and you know the cost of living in Dord City," Willow said. "I don't care. My card is in your hand. I want to go out now," Zoe insisted. Chapter 823 United Front. Byron's subordinates were fleeing in a panic near the clock tower as they had now given up resistance. Everywhere was now under the control of Sylvia's forces. Since there were too many defeated soldiers, Sylvia made a decision to gather them in a nearby city. Sylvia and Dax stood atop the city gate with a smile. They had achieved complete victory. Now, all they needed was to wait for Caspian to arrive. Before long, a vast crowd appeared, and it was Caspian's army. Thousands of vehicles rushed forward in an imposing manner. Caspian stood on one of the vehicles and waved towards Sylvia and the others. Around Caspian were tens of thousands of elites, all of them meticulously trained. Their steps were uniform, as if they were robots. As they neared the city gate, Caspian stepped down from the vehicle. Everyone lined up on both sides to welcome him. Dax and Sylvia hurriedly approached him. Dax warmly shook Caspian's hand, as his face was full of excitement. Sylvia also wanted to express her joy to Caspian, but she felt it was inappropriate considering she was a woman. If she and Caspian got too close, it would surely cause gossip. As Caspian approached the city, a loud noise suddenly erupted. Pausing, he thought that someone had attempted an ambush. Immediately, he saw his subordinates begin shooting into the air. "Sylvia, what are you doing?" Caspian asked, puzzled. "Lord Caspian, we're welcoming you with a small ceremony," Dax chuckled. Upon hearing this, Caspian was speechless. He didn't like these flashy things. If it was Sylvia's idea, he would have scolded her. But since it was Dax's idea, he didn't say much. After all, Dax was one of the 5 war gods, and his subordinates were everywhere. Caspian couldn't embarrass him. "Champion Santos, we're friends. There's no need to be so polite. Even though we've won, we still need to be careful of the International Alliance. They definitely won't sit and let this pass. They might cause trouble for us," Caspian said, somewhat worried. "Lord Caspian, are you being overly cautious? The Alliance is just a gathering of a few forces. They're just putting on a show." "I don't think they dare to act," Dax said confidently. He had been paying close attention to the situation with the Alliance. In his opinion, they wouldn't mobilize a force. But just as he finished speaking, an intelligence officer rushed over in a panic. The officer handed a piece of information to Caspian. Caspian looked at it and immediately frowned. "What's happening, Lord Caspian?" Dax became nervous when he saw Caspian's expression. Caspian didn't say much and handed the document to him. Dax took the document and read it carefully. He was completely stunned. It was a challenge letter issued by the Alliance condemning Caspian's recent actions. They demanded Caspian to immediately retreat with his subordinates. Otherwise, they would attack him. Many leaders of various forces had signed it. They had formed a united front. Caspian also realized the seriousness of the situation. If the alliance really acted, it would be an unprecedented challenge for both him and Balthazar. Just the thought of battling dozens of forces felt daunting, but Caspian couldn't submit now. He had worked hard to lead his subordinates to victory. If he gave up the victory directly, it would dampen his subordinates' motivation. "Macy, bring Manny over," Caspian said to Macy after a moment of thought. Like the other champions, Dax also looked down on Manny because he only knew how to talk. When Dax saw Manny approaching, he bowed and said, "According to our rules, you should bow too." Manny smiled indifferently and said, "We're not the same, so there's no need to follow your rules." Dax's expression darkened when he saw Manny being rude. He wanted to teach him a lesson but was stopped by Caspian. Caspian handed the document to Manny, who examined it carefully. "Mr. York, stop pretending. Do you want us to submit to the alliance?" Dax thought Manny wanted to persuade Caspian. "Champion Santos, do you think we should go to war with the alliance? This wouldn't be good news for Lord Caspian." Manny didn't seem to mind Dax's words as his expression was calm. "Regardless, Lord Caspian can't submit to the alliance. Our hard-won victory can't be taken away by others," Dax said angrily. "I've just looked through the document. Now, dozens of forces have reached an agreement. Such a situation is extremely dangerous for us. The ordinary citizens will face a disaster, and Lord Caspian will be the culprit." Manny remained indifferent. "Nonsense! How could Lord Caspian be the culprit? We're just doing what's right." Dax suddenly became irritated and pulled out his gun. Although he couldn't kill in front of Caspian, he needed to intimidate Manny. But Manny didn't care about him at all. He knew that Dax wouldn't dare to lay hands on him. After all, Caspian was here, as well as so many subordinates. "Lord Caspian, the alliance must have come to such a decision after much discussion. If we act recklessly now, it'll only bring more serious consequences," Manny said. Caspian found Manny's words reasonable. "What measures do you think we should take, Mr. York?" Caspian asked. "Lord Caspian, I can serve as a representative to negotiate with them. I can guarantee that I can come up with a perfect solution," Manny said confidently. "Good. I'll report this matter. If His Majesty agrees, I'll let you be the representative. This can also be your chance to redeem yourself. Even if the result isn't good, we can buy some time and plan what's next," Caspian said. Chapter 824, Preparing for Negotiations. Byron is now a prisoner, and we can handle him however we like. The power is in our hands. Caspian had long thought about how to deal with Byron, so this question wasn't difficult for him to answer. "I've also learned a bit about Byron. He's not very smart. The reason he was so arrogant was for the sake of his reputation and his continuous tolerance for Jerry. Now that you've stepped in, he has immediately become a coward," Manny said. "What do you think?" Caspian asked. "I'm just going to express my own opinion. I think we can let Byron return to Filren. As long as we eliminate his subordinates, especially the biggest threat called Jason Gill, I think Byron will be powerless. Besides, Jason abandoned Byron at the most critical moment. He has fled elsewhere. If we eliminate Byron, Jason might cause trouble, which isn't good news. With the help of other forces, he might make a comeback." "Alright, I understand. Laina, take Mr. York back to Dord City now. I'll discuss this matter with the king." "Got it!" Laina answered immediately. Laina was supposed to feel happy that Caspian had tasked her, as it was a sign that he trusted her. But the thought of leaving him suddenly made her feel a bit sad. Only by staying by Caspian's side could she feel happiness. When Laina caught herself with such thoughts, she was startled. He's Lord Caspian. How can you have other thoughts about him? Besides, he's already married. You absolutely can't indulge in your wild fantasies now, she thought to herself. Even though she did have feelings for Caspian, her rationality told her that she absolutely couldn't indulge in them. She had always been a proud woman. For over 20 years, this was the first time she was in love. To prevent Caspian from noticing anything, she could only quickly leave. In the eyes of others, Laina was still the aloof and beautiful Ice Queen. Filren was now in ruins, as it was in complete chaos. Many people could only live in temporary tents. In a relatively spacious tent, Byron slowly woke up. As soon as he opened his eyes, he saw Macy smiling at him. By now she had changed back into her suit of armor, and her curves looked extremely perfect. At first, he didn't recognize her. When he got up, he saw that Caspian was there too. His limbs were free and not bound. "Byron, did you expect to meet in a place like this?" Caspian said with a smile. "Caspian, you sure know how to play tricks. If you have the guts, let's face off in a fair fight," Byron said, somewhat angry. "Of course we can duel. But I won't play with the lives of my subordinates. Throughout history, the victors write the rules. As long as I win, I don't think anyone will care about how I do it. Losers are losers. No matter what you say, they're all excuses." Byron couldn't fool Caspian. "I think you're afraid." Byron huffed angrily. "Say what you want. There are only winners in this world. If you hadn't insisted on provoking me, the situation wouldn't have turned out like this." Caspian looked at Byron and said. Caspian's words left Byron feeling a bit lost. He had no way out now since Caspian wouldn't fall for his tricks. Looking at Byron's nervous expression, Caspian smiled. "Now that everything has settled, whatever you say is useless." "Caspian, what do you want? Do you want to kill me?" Byron asked. "I'm not sure yet. This is a matter between us, so I don't necessarily have to kill you. But it's pointless to keep someone like you, who brings disaster, alive," Caspian said calmly. "You can kill me if you like, just don't humiliate me." "I'm a man of reputation," Byron said. "How I deal with you is my business." "You have no say in this," Caspian said coldly. Suddenly, Byron raised his palm and struck himself on the acupoint. This sudden move startled Macy, but she was too late to stop him. Luckily, Caspian acted swiftly. He grabbed Byron's arm and said coldly, "You can't die yet when I haven't let you." Byron didn't expect Caspian to be so powerful. Kenelm probably wouldn't stand a chance against Caspian. He couldn't understand why Caspian was so powerful at such a young age. "Byron, I advise you to be honest. Maybe I can spare your life," Caspian said calmly. Byron knew that Caspian was ruthless, and he dared not to mess around now. "Caspian, you're really lucky to have become the Diaturanian god of war at such a young age. Besides, you have such powerful martial arts skills. It's really admirable," Byron said with a bitter smile. Then, Byron looked at Macy and said, "You even have such a beautiful wife by your side. Your life is truly blessed." Upon hearing Byron mistakenly think she was Caspian's wife, Macy felt embarrassed. But she enjoyed the feeling very much. Being mistaken for Caspian's wife felt great. Caspian didn't realize Byron's implication. He thought Byron was talking about Willow. "I'm not a superficial person. I value a person's qualities more," Caspian said with a smile. Now, Macy understood that Caspian was talking about Willow. Byron thought about how his family was always full of schemes. He wondered if his life would have been more carefree if he had a good wife like Caspian's. "Go and prepare some good food and wine. I'm going to have a chat with Byron," Caspian ordered. It would be much easier to get information out from Byron after getting him drunk. Although Manny had already told Caspian about Byron's weakness, this matter was very important. Caspian needed to understand Byron more deeply. Seeing Caspian's serious expression, Byron relaxed a little. He had been living like a fugitive recently, only eating one meal a day. He hadn't had good food for a while. Now that there was good food, he definitely needed to eat well. Soon Macy brought in a whole roasted lamb and 2 bottles of wine. Chapter 825 All-Night Conversation. Caspian directly tore off a lamb leg and handed it to Byron. Smelling the fragrant roast meat, Byron's mouth began to water. He couldn't resist anymore. At this point he didn't care whether the food was poisoned or not. He just wolfed it down. After Byron had taken a few bites, Caspian poured a glass of wine and handed it to him. Seeing the wine in front of him, Byron had a bold idea. If he could get Caspian drunk, maybe he would have a chance to escape. This was a rare opportunity for him. After Byron had made up his mind, he became more enthusiastic and started drinking with Caspian. "Caspian, although I'm the king of Filren, I feel quite aggrieved." Before Byron could finish his sentence, Caspian pointed at Macy and said, "Camden was killed by Macy." Upon hearing this, Macy felt a bit unhappy. Byron was stunned. He hadn't expected Macy to be so capable, that she was able to infiltrate Filren and successfully accomplish the assassination. This kind of thing required a lot of courage. In Byron's view, he thought Macy was Caspian's lover. After all, it was normal for someone like Caspian to have many admire him. If not, why would Caspian personally lead a team to rescue Macy? "I didn't expect Mrs. Lynch to be so skillful. I truly admire her. But her deed had also given me an opportunity. Otherwise, how could I have risen to power?" Byron raised his glass and said to Caspian. When Caspian heard Byron's words, he finally understood what was going on. Byron had mistaken Macy as his wife. As he was about to speak, Macy stood up directly. "Thank you for the praise." Macy smiled. Then, she took a sip of wine. "Indeed, behind every successful man there's an outstanding woman. It's truly admirable." Byron smiled and said. Afterward, he also drank a few more glasses. Caspian thought he was very good at drinking, but now it seemed that Byron's alcohol tolerance was also good. It wouldn't be easy to get him drunk. As they continued drinking, Byron became more talkative. Caspian knew that Byron had drunk too much by now. Even if Caspian didn't make him drink, Byron wanted to. Unexpectedly, Byron suddenly slumped onto the table and cried bitterly. Seeing this scene, Caspian finally felt relieved. He had finally broken through Byron's psychological defenses. "Caspian, do you think it's easy to be a king? I can't sleep every night. I don't want to go to war, but because of public opinion, I have no choice. With you around, how could I dare to fight you? I took over the throne, but I have no real power. It's not easy for me either," Byron cried, looking pitiful. "I understand. It's not easy for everyone," Caspian said. "Do you really understand? If you did, you'd save some of my reputation. Couldn't we just spar lightly? Why did you have to push me to a dead end? Do you know how my subordinates ridicule me? They dare to laugh at you? Yeah! They say I'm incompetent, and it's all because of me that we're in such a desperate situation. If it weren't for the lack of manpower, I'd want to kill them all. I also want to enjoy my later years peacefully, but what can I do? Jerry suddenly came to me, and I thought my chance had come. I thought I could show off, but who knew?" As Byron spoke, he began to cry again. Seeing that he looked so pitiful, Caspian was somewhat moved. After Byron drank too much, he fell asleep directly. The next morning, Caspian pretended to be asleep. At this moment, Byron suddenly made a sound. He rubbed his temples and got up, looking a bit confused as he glanced around. He only remembered eating with Caspian last night, but he couldn't remember anything after that. As Byron was about to leave, he suddenly noticed that Caspian was still asleep. He was stunned for a moment and then quickly got up. The person in front of him, whom he had been thinking about killing day and night, was here. This was a perfect opportunity for him, as Caspian was sleeping soundly. Byron raised his hand and aimed at Caspian, but he didn't dare to act. Besides, he remembered the scene of drinking and chatting with Caspian last night. Last night was the most comfort he had felt in a while. He suddenly felt that having someone to confide in was extremely rare. Byron instantly felt a little guilty. Caspian had been good to him, but he only thought about revenge. He was too narrow-minded and should be more tolerant. Since he had already lost, he couldn't kill Caspian even if he wanted to escape. Otherwise, he would be despised by everyone. At the thought of this, Byron put down his hand as he couldn't bring himself to do it. Finally, he returned to the couch and didn't lay a hand on Caspian. Since he took office, he had been living in fear every day. Besides, everyone was wary of him. This had made him extremely troubled. Just then, Caspian stretched and rubbed his eyes as he pretended to have just woken up. Seeing this, Byron immediately got up and asked, "Caspian, are you feeling well? Did you drink too much last night?" Caspian was taken aback for a moment. He then smiled and said, "Yeah, I didn't expect you to have such high alcohol tolerance. It's the first time I've gotten drunk. You flatter me too much. Your tolerance is also impressive. We're about even because I also blacked out toward the end." Byron laughed heartily. He now had no burdens in his heart. "Byron, I drank too much yesterday and forgot everything. I didn't say anything I shouldn't have, did I?" Caspian pretended. "I should be asking you this question, right? I also want to know if I revealed any secrets," Byron joked. "Caspian, for two enemies like us to drink together, it's truly unprecedented," he sighed. If the situations were different, Byron really wanted to become good friends with Caspian. "We may not be on the same side, but that doesn't prevent us from being friends," Caspian said straightforwardly. Byron was taken aback for a moment and then looked at Caspian. Both of them shook hands, and this marked a historic moment. Afterward, Caspian made a call to Sylvia. He asked her to provide Byron with a place to freshen up. Chapter 826 Show the Evidence. When Sylvia came to see Byron, she was fully armed. She was worried that he might play tricks. However, she was utterly stunned upon entering the tent and seeing the scene before her. Caspian and Byron were chatting lively. This was a situation that she hadn't anticipated. Sylvia admired and respected Caspian deeply after working with him for years. Besides, he treated her well. Therefore she was very respectful toward him, especially on the battlefield when Caspian's presence was filled with dominance that gave people an invisible pressure on their shoulders. So, Sylvia didn't dare to joke casually with him. Byron glanced at Sylvia and sized her up. "Caspian, I didn't expect you to be surrounded by so many beauties. You're so lucky," he laughed. "I can't help that I'm too charming," Caspian laughed. "I never expected you to be so narcissistic. You remind me of myself when I was young." Byron grinned. Hearing him joke around, Sylvia, who was initially nervous, was relieved. It seemed she had been overthinking earlier. In the Alliance Hall, the leaders of various factions were gathered, listening to Manny's eloquent speech. He was unwavering, and was actually very powerful. Sitting at the forefront was Alexander, accompanied by representatives of various factions. According to Alexander's intention, dealing with Caspian was undeniably an urgent matter. However, the leaders of other factions wanted to hear what Manny had to say first. Instead of taking the initiative, they preferred to see what tricks Caspian might pull. Moreover, they needed a legitimate reason to mobilize their troops. After all, mobilizing troops without a valid reason would only cause dissatisfaction from others. By then, it wouldn't be good news for the Alliance. Manny stood in the center of the hall, facing the gaze of everyone present. He didn't feel nervous at all. He remained confident, despite being the center of attention. "If you don't speak now, get out and stop embarrassing yourself," someone shouted suddenly. Manny, who was preparing his speech, was momentarily stunned by the interruption. Then, his demeanor changed. "Little Manny York, representing Diatoran to talk with all of you. I am here to share the thoughts and principles of Diatoran with you. Of course, I'm a bit nervous. I understand the purpose of your alliance, but have you considered the consequences of your actions?" Manny spoke confidently. Despite the scrutiny of others, he remained unaffected. This time, he wasn't just representing himself but the entire Diatoran. The alliance was established for the sake of maintaining peace and helping weaker forces. "Mr. Martin, what is the purpose of the alliance now?" Manny asked, staring at Alexander. "The alliance's purpose remained unchanged. We have always been committed to maintaining peace, and our stance will never change," Alexander said calmly. "Then is the alliance's intention to deal with Caspian and Diatoran also for the sake of peace?" Manny continued. "Of course. We're doing this for peace," a high-ranking member interjected. "Do you understand the truth behind the matter? Do you even know the causes before making such a decision? You make reckless decisions based on others' words. Isn't that too hasty?" Manny raised his voice. "Caspian has already captured Byron. Isn't that obvious?" The representative from Estria chimed in. "Mr. Martin, since your purpose is to uphold justice and peace, shouldn't you ask why two forces are now in conflict? Directly suppressing the strength of one side is too unfair," Manny argued reasonably. Manny's statement made Alexander feel somewhat helpless. Although he appeared to have great authority, everyone knew that the real power didn't lie with him, as he was just a puppet of many forces. "Mr. York, I've made my own decision. Besides, I've already investigated this matter thoroughly. Otherwise, I wouldn't have issued the declaration," Alexander said coldly. Once the other representatives heard his response, they immediately expressed their dissatisfaction. Alexander noticed this too. He really didn't have much power. "Mr. Martin, esteemed leaders, I know you are all busy. Regarding this matter, let me tell you the truth with evidence." With that, Manny took out a recording pen containing some recordings. Suddenly someone stood up and intervened. "These things are unreliable. And with today's advanced technology, they can be easily fabricated. It's up to you to believe it or not. With so many people here, your words alone don't count. I'll show the evidence and everyone can judge for themselves. I haven't even shown the evidence yet, and you're already objecting. Are you guilty?" Manny looked at the representative from Vedesia. "Hasn't Caspian done plenty of secretive things? I think everyone has their own judgment by now," the representative from Estria added. "Let's see the evidence first. After that, we'll see what else he has to say." Another representative spoke up. "I want $40 trillion as compensation and 3 cities from West Aridlands. Otherwise, I will turn Diatoran into a living hell." "Think carefully," Byron's sinister voice came from the recording pen. "I can agree to your conditions for compensation, but the cities are non-negotiable. I can't let my people suffer. That's my bottom line," followed Jerry's voice. Upon hearing this, many people began to understand what was going on. It turned out that Jerry was playing tricks. "Do you think I'm negotiating with you? I'm giving you only 72 hours. Once time's up, I'll take action," Byron said viciously. Upon hearing this, many people were stunned. Where did Byron get the courage to say such things? Moreover, Filren didn't possess such powerful strength. Do you all understand what's going on now? It has always been Byron stirring up troubles. We've never mentioned killing others, Manny continued. Upon hearing this, others nodded in agreement. Seeing this scene, Alexander felt that something was amiss. It seemed that some people were beginning to believe Manny's words. Then the representative of Vidizia hurriedly stood up and shouted, "Don't be fooled. These are all fabricated by them." "Hold on, there's more to come," Manny said again. Chapter 827, Retiring in Glory. The following news was a bombshell because it concerned the secret negotiations between Vidizia and Estria. They had initially pledged to divide territories. Once this matter was exposed, it would definitely be disadvantageous for the alliance. After listening to the recording, everyone present was dumbfounded. It turned out they had been deceived all along. In reality, Diatoren was the victim who was merely defending herself. Suddenly, someone stood up and declared, "I now announce that I'm withdrawing from the alliance. I will never lay a hand on Caspian. I'm also withdrawing. Clearly, we've all been deceived. Caspian has been right all along." Another member echoed. More and more countries stood up. It wasn't until this moment that they understood the truth. They had been misled by the one-sided words of Vidizia and Estria. Hence, they wanted to attack Caspian. But now, it all seemed rather foolish. If they had indeed acted against Caspian, they would have become sinners. Fortunately, they stopped in time. It seems everyone has made the right decision. It's not too late to stop now. Besides, Caspian has already prepared a secret weapon. If he strikes, I believe everyone here will suffer terribly. You all know the power of those giant weapons from before, right? Manny suddenly said somewhat proudly. Now that he had the upper hand, he had nothing to fear. Seeing that many had made their stance clear, Alexander didn't have much to say. He dared not go against the majority's opinion. Moreover, he was essentially just a spokesperson and a puppet for many forces. Since everybody has decided, the campaign against Caspian ends here. In the future, whoever dares to stir up trouble will be opposing the entire alliance. I also hope that Caspian can be more calm in the future and refrain from causing harm to other forces. Alexander immediately spoke up. He naturally had to give everyone an explanation. Many forces shook their heads because their conspiracy had failed. Shortly after, Manny returned to Diatoren. The news of his successful negotiation quickly reached Diatoren and excited everyone. Meanwhile, Caspian returned to Dord City with his troops. The streets of Dord City were deserted, with tens of thousands of people welcoming him. "Lord Caspian, Diatoranian god of war, you are our savior!" The crowd shouted Caspian's name loudly. At this moment, everyone admired him. As long as Caspian was there, they didn't need to worry about anything. It was proven that their choice to believe in Caspian was correct because his strength was truly formidable. Every time he appeared, he would turn the situation around and solve all the troubles, which reassured everyone. Willow and Sherry had arrived at the airport early to welcome Caspian. Willow couldn't wait to see him the most. They had been apart for too long, and she missed him. Zoe stood beside Willow and teased, "Willow, are you eager to see Caspian?" "Of course. It's been a long time since I last saw him." Willow nodded as she genuinely missed Caspian. "Lord Caspian! Lord Caspian!" Accompanied by the cheers, one tank appeared after another at the airport. Caspian stood on top of the tank and enjoyed the treatment. Even Balthazar came to the airport to welcome Caspian. Without Caspian, he would still be in danger. Balthazar didn't know how to reward Caspian anymore, but he felt obliged to cherish Caspian. Macy and Sylvia were sitting inside the tank and felt the enthusiasm of the crowd. This was the proudest moment of their lives. "Caspian, you've worked hard." Balthazar came in front of the vehicle. Caspian immediately saluted him. "Your Majesty, it's my duty, it's not a big deal," Caspian smiled. "We can be carefree in the future. Do you have any wishes?" "I can fulfill them for you," Balthazar said to Caspian. Caspian's contributions to the nation were immense. As the king, Balthazar had to reward Caspian properly. Otherwise, he wouldn't feel at ease. "I don't have any requests, Your Majesty. I only have one wish. Can we rebuild South Lake City and South Lake Corporation? I plan to retire. There shouldn't be any more wars in the future," Caspian said. He was tired of the life of fighting and killing. It was time to end it all. "You want to retire at such a young age? I thought of letting you become the king in the future." "All right, I'll help fulfill your wish. But when I retire, Diatoren will be governed by you." Balthazar laughed. He wouldn't let anyone else handle this matter. He only trusted Caspian as only Caspian was capable of it. Okay, Caspian nodded. Then, he saw Willow in the crowd. Hubby, hubby, Willow shouted loudly and waved at Caspian once she spotted him. At this moment, she felt like the happiest woman in the world. Willow, I'm back! Caspian got off the tank and looked at Willow affectionately. He hadn't seen her in almost half a month, and he missed her terribly. He had been busy running around lately and hadn't given her much attention. Now that he finally had some time, Caspian wanted to finish what he had left unfinished. Willow, let's have a child. There won't be any more accidents in the future. I want to retire and live a good life with you, Caspian said affectionately. Okay, I want to have a bunch of children with you and let them become little gods of war in the future, Willow said happily. Finally, she could live a peaceful life with Caspian. She had long fantasized about living an ordinary life with him. Otherwise, she couldn't bear it if Caspian continued to be away from her most of the time. Sherry and Logan watched this scene with happiness. Stop being so lovey-dovey, Zoe groaned. Caspian and Willow shared a passionate kiss before walking through the crowd and basking in the envious gazes of everyone. We've reached the end of this book, and I wish it hadn't concluded so quickly. The story was a thrilling roller coaster, packed with exhilarating moments that kept us on the edge of our seats. Here are some of my thoughts. Jerry's deserved punishment was not implemented. Also, Caspian's reinstatement as the god of war and the clearing of his name from all accusations were overlooked. Willow's backstory could have been delved into more deeply, and her transition into motherhood would have added an intriguing twist. But hey, the ending was still fantastic, and I'm completely up for a sequel. A huge thank you for sticking with me. I deeply appreciate each one of you for joining me on this literary adventure. Please continue to support my channel. Alright? I'm excited to embark on our next thrilling journey together.